everyone. Thanks for having me. I am Grace Keith Rodriguez, President of Caliber Corporate Advisors. We're a strategic marketing communications firm that helps financial institutions and fintech companies tell their story and reach their target audience. So we focus on things like public relations, content marketing, and digital marketing. Glad to be here.
Great. Thank you. Scott?
Well, Grace did a pretty good job describing us too. I'm Mills president, William Mills Agency, and we work with about 55 companies, most of whom provide some kind of tech in the financial industry. So it can be large companies like Jack Henry or Equifax or NCR, down to early stage fintechs that are figuring out, the best way to go to market. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Jennifer, next.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Tramontana. I'm president and founder of the Fletcher Group. We have been around for about 15 years, focused on helping what are now called fintech companies. Back then, they were called alternative financial service providers. And we work with a lot of sort of legacy incumbents in the space, companies like Galileo Financial Technologies, Blackhawk Network, and then some of the new exciting innovators in the space as well. And we're hiring. So if there's anybody out there looking for a job, go and check out our website or my LinkedIn profile. I'd love to connect with you.
Jennifer, I'm sorry to ask you to do this, but we actually are streaming live on YouTube. I feel so old that we're able to do this, but the sound feedback kind of came in while you were introducing yourself. So can you just give the first part of your introduction again?
Sure. So I'm Jennifer Tramontana, president and founder of the Fletcher Group. You all caught that we're hiring. That's the most important thing to me to let everybody know today. But I was just saying that we've been around for about 15 years. We work with fintech and payment companies, lots who've been in the space for a long time, like Galileo and Blackhawk Network, and then sort of new innovators as well. So doing a lot of the same things that Scott and Grace and Gregory are doing. There's certainly enough companies out there to go around in this space.
Amazing. My partner, Aaron, just said he forwarded your job postings onto our LinkedIn page. So
excellent. Thank you, Aaron.
Wow.
Appreciate it.
That's service.
Gregory, last but definitely not least.
Thank you, sir. Gregory Papajohn. Good to see everybody. Founder of Archie Group. Archie is a reputation capital firm. We're going to use a different word for a second, but RepCap is all about working with growth stage companies that, just like they may be expanding in terms of their product set, they're thinking about how can we build up the esteem and the profile of their business. We insert as an operating partner to the company, much like other operating partners who might tackle sales and marketing acceleration or FP&A or product design or work design. We just focus on the reputation. Our clients, just using maybe the last few months, we've launched a few challenger banks over the last few months, lots of fun ones. Hopefully some of you saw the news around Daylight, first LGBT digital bank, Go Henry in the family finance space, working with a SPAC listed company as well. Maybe we'll talk about some SPACs today.
Who isn't, Greg?
Right, in that market. Things have been pretty hot in the space that we all represent. So it's a great pleasure to be here today and talk with you all.
Yeah, it definitely was. 2020 was definitely a challenging year, and it feels like 2021 is the beginning, at least, shows good things for fintech in general, and for you guys. Looks like there's a lot of new products, a lot of new news out there.
Yeah, I'd be doing Zach a disservice if I didn't say ahead financial as well from the LendUp team. I mean, underserved market. Maybe we'll talk some more about that as well. That's another great idea bank.
So I want to keep the discussion kind of open in that sense. And if you've heard, hopefully you've had a chance to hear some of the speakers this week. But we heard a lot about influencer marketing, especially the challenger banks or the payments companies that are targeting Gen Z and millennials. Influencer marketing continues to play a big role. Where they're even coming onto the cap table and investing, celebrity investors. We've heard a lot about that. We've heard a lot about the interactivity between product and marketing. We've heard even just in the session before this about Tally, about how customer service is feeding the product marketing and marketing feedback loop. So I want to kind of keep this open in the sense, like, what are you guys seeing with clients that's working now? in terms of growth, marketing, branding. What are you guys seeing from your perspectives? Jennifer, would you like to start?
Sure. So I think that a couple of key things, and I'm sure everybody experienced, this. Most of the clients that we work with, big or small, have really stepped back and repositioned themselves, over the last year, or doing so right now. And what's interesting about that is that marketing is leading right now versus product leading. Like in many cases, our clients have now determined that they know where they need to go, they know how they need to reposition, and then there's like a catch-up situation with product to fit into that. And so it's trying to find the right way to project their aspirational goals, or like what's right around the corner and that's coming, versus like maybe where they're at today. And I would say there's really no company in fintech, unless they're launching today or had launched during the pandemic, that has not gone through some sort of like repositioning, changing their go-to-market strategy, et cetera. So that we have found a way to like work with our clients and new clients to do that really quite quickly, to take a look at like what's happening in market. How do we, take a look at what consumer, changes and habits have done over the last 12 months. It's going to continue, and make sure that their products and services and the way that they're positioned in market fits right with that. The other thing that I would say is that, brand awareness through earned media is as important or more important than ever. Outlets like yourself, Zach, and others out there that are doing really strong, sort of more thoughtful profile and, pieces that really talk about like where the customer needs are and where they're going, and fitting our clients into that has become more important than it was even probably 12 months ago.
Great. Can you bring an example? Do you have an example from a client or a non-client?
With earned media. So we've had sort of I'll give you one great example. All 5 of our clients were featured as your experts at the end of last year in one roll-up article. So we were really proud to see that, and thank you for that. And we've had sort of a number of other situations, but none quite as good as being like all 5 of them in the Tearsheet feature. So thank you.
How about the rest of you? You can just jump in.
All right. I tend to pay a lot of attention to traditional financial institutions and how they're evolving. And I don't know if you've ever done this, where you just wanted to see a whole bunch of bank websites and you go to 10, 20 at a time. They generally look pretty similar. Yeah. And, I think there are a number of good things that are happening. I think traditional FIs, even community FIs and credit unions, are starting to look at what some challenger banks are doing and saying, all right, well, why can't we do that? And so I think there's a real, I'm calling it a renaissance of traditional FIs looking to figure out, their place in the world. They just can't be the same thing as everybody else. So what does that look like? For a lot of, since we're talking about acquiring and retaining customers, a lot of that means outsourcing some skills in marketing, some data scientists. So you have to be of a certain size before you can have a really serious data science kind of team on your bank staff. If you don't have it, you need to look for service providers that can help you do stuff with all that wonderful data that you have. One example client, shameless plug, Kasasa in Austin. But the other thing I'm seeing that I'm pretty excited about is what I'll refer to as modular digital banking. And that is niche players in fintech creating something that can be distributed by financial institutions to help them, say, like have a teen parent app like Greenlight. So like our friends at Agora are doing, they're saying, all right, Greenlight's tapped into something. Let's add that capability to traditional financial institutions so that they can provide more services and expand more things like that. Another example is Finsley out of Charlotte, which is creating very, very verticalized ways to serve markets. Like if you were a traditional bank and you wanted to pursue more municipal deposits, that's a very specialized kind of skill set and requirements, and they have created something that tacks on to their existing digital banking or done as a separate app.
I think to jump in and build off of what Scott was saying, we actually also work with a number of traditional financial institutions, and they're really turning to us to say, what are the fintechs doing right now? How can we take lessons from what they've done? How can we adapt and become a little bit more creative in our approach? So to your point, the website's looking really similar. They're getting more comfortable, and I think they're feeling that they have to get more comfortable with having a person associated with the brand, not just hiding behind the brand itself. And that means creating a full marketing approach, a full PR approach to a leader within the organization. It's not just the company has a statement and it's issued by a spokesperson. There's a person associated with that. And we're seeing that across a number of our clients. They're creating a personality. They're adding humanity to what they're doing, which I think, especially right now, is very important. I don't think too many people would disagree with that one. So that's something that we're really trying to help our clients think through is how do you make sure that you're adding a human element? And that can come in earned media, like Jennifer mentioned, thinking about how do we position our people as experts, not just relying on a press release, but okay, well, let's think about regulation. Who do we have that's an expert there? Making sure that you're building the brands of each person underneath the overall brand together. That's something that I think we'll continue to see into the future. We saw it pre-pandemic as well, but I think it really just kind of supercharged that need to be a little bit more human.
Just hearing what everyone's describing, maybe I'll add three more ideas into the pot. One I'll just call top down meets bottom up, and the second one I'll call product as PR, and the third I'll call authenticity. So top down meets bottom up. I'm thinking of a client that from the bottoms up has become more engaged in cultural marketing. They're using arts, they're using entertainment, they're using music. During the Super Bowl, they were running a Twitch stream, so they were in gaming, right with the community that they intend to do business with. But what's the top down? At the same time, we're working on more of an institutional program that has to do with providing access to credit, working with nonprofit partners and thinking about what could be a next stage or next perspective on a credit score and credit health. In the space of product as PR. In fact, actually, it's the fintechs I rep now are reflecting on playbooks that were used by, B of A and Amex and MasterCard when I represented principally enterprise firms. They are saying, hey, look, I know folks aren't going through airports as much as they used to, but should we be looking at things like out of home and papering? Should we be considering having new relationships with, say, an ATM network, so we're putting the product right in the place where the customer is? How do we deploy some of the tactics of the large financial firms as we scale up, as we expand, as we become shortly publicly listed companies? In the space of authenticity, for all the right reasons, folks wanted to be more socially active last year, right? And then they were saying, how can we contribute? But what we do in most instances is pause with the client and say, are we ourselves, a good actor in the space called diversity? Can we, if we had to open our own kimono here, can we live up to the same things we might want to activate in the public? Is that authentically us? With one client as an example, they're thinking about broadly DE&I. But what we learned was that where they have perhaps advantage is specific to gender, not across all. So perhaps we start in a smaller space, such as gender. Could we build a beachhead there, learn ourselves, improve our own approach to market, and then bring others into the fold? So just a few other ways to think about PR and marketing.
I like that framework. I just want to ask the same question, I guess, flipping it on its head. One of the things that I heard over the past couple of days was almost everybody came into 2020 with a marketing plan, and that went out the window. For some companies, it was shelved, and they're going to bring it back now. Others, it was too tone deaf and too wasn't appropriate for what happened this past year. I'd love to hear from you guys, like what's not working now. Grace, would you want to take a stab at that one?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. I think just tying back to what is working, what's not working is the perhaps I should say, age-old preference of no comment.
Mm.
We're not in a world right now where that's going to get you very far. That's something that has been, I would say, consistently changing. But you'll probably notice in a lot of media outlets covering, whether it's just general news or breaking news or what have you, companies are embracing more having a comment, having an opinion, even having an opinion that's not the same as their competitors and is not the same as the folks that are within their group, if you will. So that's not working. Sorry?
Even if it's like political?
Political, I think, is probably a totally different discussion. But I would say if there's something going on within the industry, it's important to have a voice about it. It's important to not just stand by and watch everyone else have a voice, because your customers are looking and reading that news on a regular basis. And if they don't see you as part of the conversation, they're going to start to wonder what's going on. So that, I think, is not working. And also quantity. We're in a world where we're constantly getting emails, getting LinkedIn requests, all of that. So quantity is no longer going to be the thing that's going to break through to a customer on the acquiring front. It's more about quality. Quality is so important. Quality, consistency, and making sure that the content that you're creating, the voice that you're creating has a human to it, but also isn't just constantly in front of your face, making sure that there's something behind it, there's an opinion behind it. And to Gregory's point, the authenticity is very important in that.
I got a few ideas on what's not working. Digital customer service isn't working yet. And we've seen some really high profile examples. And I'm not doing this to pick on Robinhood, but it's a personal story, so I'll tell it. So I opened up the account, cool, able to get money in, great, able to invest it fairly easy, nice interface. But something wasn't working like it told me it was supposed to. And so I go to the FAQ section and I read it, and I can't figure out why my screen doesn't look like what they're saying. And I can't find a phone number. I think I found a form and ultimately filled out a form and sent it to them. And I never heard back from them. And then a couple of days later, well, with the exception of a couple of days later, I got the email that said, "Hey, how did we do on your customer service request?" And unfortunately, they didn't have a 0 on that scale.
That's a fail.
But, I don't want to say anybody can acquire customers. I know anybody can lend money. The hard part in lending is getting paid back. The same thing holds true with customer retention. It's a lot harder to keep these customers. And I know from our telephone numbers and emails being on press releases, sometimes if people are frustrated with an FI, they'll look for the PR department and they'll send us nasty notes about, why they can't, get a call back. And the other thing that I saw that I thought was fascinating in the last 6 months was the amount of social media rebellion against one credit union for having such long wait times on with their call center. I mean, that's a huge problem that they had to fix, and that's a PR problem.
I would say also silos aren't working, and that's like not a new idea, of course, but let's go back to what I was saying at the beginning about how everybody's, repositioned, right? Everyone's shelved the marketing plan, repositioned over the last year, whatever. So, we no longer can have like executive leadership, product, marketing, communication, whatever, everybody just sort of like dispersed and doing their own things. The lines for our specific industry that we're all in, that what we do every day, the lines between PR and marketing have been blurring for years. And I would say in the last, during the pandemic, they've all just completely fallen away. And so every program now of where you're trying to build credible awareness, or you're trying to generate leads, whatever it is, it needs to have this model around it where you've got, the mix of, paid, earned, owned, and shared social content. Like it's all got to come together, right? Like the person who's doing the frontline media relations and the executive visibility plan, like Grace was saying, has also got to understand what the person doing the sponsored, LinkedIn ads is doing. Like it's all got to be together now and under an umbrella that everybody knows what the other hand's doing. So Does that mean that everyone needs to be a jack of all trades? I think that's an interesting discussion sort of for this group, because I feel like even in PR and marketing, we've started to silo people much more. Like when I started my career in PR, you were a junior associate, then you were an associate, then you were a manager, like whatever it is, but you did all the things, right? Like you just did them more and managed more people. So our industry, I feel like in the last 5 years has moved towards more like media specialists and content specialists and things of that nature. And I think it's going to be interesting to see for us, is that going to really line up with, with what our clients are doing, or are we going to need to go back to being a little bit more generalist? So I don't know. That's just something that I've been kind of pondering in our industry a bit.
Good point.
Yeah, agreed.
Maybe I'll add the one that is never works, never will work, and sure doesn't work now. That's called going it alone. That does not work. Just thinking about a few calls I've had this week. On those calls, we'd have the client, a financial actor. We'd have someone in the social sector. We had one of their commercial partners. We had an actor at the public policy level. All of this was toward influencing another stakeholder in terms of some actions they were taking. If we'd done that alone, nothing would move. Nothing would happen. So collective action, I would say, should be and continues to be in vogue. Whereas independent action, it's almost more important. I think there's even a fun. We're talking about fun YouTube video, and look up the second follower. One of the most fun video. Enjoy it, but be the second follower. Someone might get something going, but it's more important that second follower gets everybody whipped up and going. One other thing, I love what Grace said about the word quantity. An initial point of view I might have on this new year is that share of voice is out. Share of mind is out. I'm going to be controversial and say that too. You know what's in? Instead of getting 100 placements, get me 2 in the right place. Okay.
That's crazy talk. What are you saying?
I know. Right? Hey, let's keep this up. All you really need are 10 to 12, and they need to be on the first page of Google. Let's be blunt here. Is that share of voice? Is that share of mind? No, that's being present. It's being visible. It's being accessible. It's being known in the first chance someone has to get to know you. So, I haven't written about that. You're going to inspire me, Zach, to write my own pieces, I guess. But I am finding lately that when I hear the question about, well, what's our share of voice and what's our volume? I said, what's your relevance? Right. And so that might be another one that's top of mind here at the start of a new year.
I like that a lot. I see that you use the second follower, Gregory, in your own sort of responses. You kind of wait till everybody else speaks and you find that the opportunity in the empty space. So let's start with the next question to you. What are the most impactful investments a financial services company or a fintech can make today?
Question. Well, the P words come to mind. Lots of P words: people, process, price, purpose. I think all of those still have a high degree of relevance as marketers, as those who deal with publics, who relate with the public here in public relations. If I was trying to choose among, say, the thing, I have found of late that it comes back to people. So at our Archie Group, we're focused on what would be called scale-ups and growth stage companies. Mm-hmm. We keep an exceptions or an exceptionals business that might be startups. And with the startups, sure, founder-led, a handful of people. But when you get into scale-up, expansion stage, and perhaps you're nearing some either large institutional capital raise or an exit, you quickly learn that the force of your own will not make the progress you need. I think I was reading today, maybe it was your story, Zach, just about, I think it's Marqeta now that's, the next one that's about to go public. Mm-hmm. I recall working with Marqeta and Jason 4 or 5 years ago when they were in the middle of a pivot. Let's be blunt here. I mean, that was a business that was almost not going to be in business. They were still a gift card business. And they made a really notable pivot, becoming both an issuer and a processor and a platform for really any payment program provider. Well, Jason did that with a fantastic team, not Jason alone. And it was the people that had technology chops, product chops, financial chops, chief executive, HR, all coming together. I'm seeing the same thing thinking about Anu Schultes and her team at LendUp. The way that she's built such a veteran team, 20 years deep, each member of the team. It's a minority-led team too. 50% of that senior leadership team are women. Majority of the team, people of color as well. And that wasn't even purpose. That was just good hiring on her part, right? So people comes to mind first as I think about this new year and who you're putting side by side, elbow to elbow with you in that room as you build up your public presence and you market your business.
Great. Anyone else? Investments?
Well, a couple areas, I think it was one of my friends that's a bank consultant was talking about the marketing departments of FI seems to be an area that's maybe not has received the funding and resources that they should have. And I'll just add to something that Jennifer said about breaking down the silos. It's really complex when you're trying to scale up the acquisition function and the marketing function, the ability, it can lead to all kinds of issues in other parts of the FI. So we haven't mentioned AI yet, but I think AI should be used to help make smarter decisions on who you open an account for, who you extend credit to, and how much. And it can be used for a number of things that'll keep you from making a lot of bad decisions. But I think one thing that's really kind of taboo in our industry to talk about, but cross-selling. I think all of these niche players that have one or two products, their success is going to come from offering more services. And while cross-selling is a bad word, really, if done appropriately, you're helping the customer because they're buying. You're helping them buy. You're not selling them. You're helping them buy stuff that they need. And maybe it's stuff to manage their money better. Maybe it's something to help me reduce my interest payments on credit. But cross-selling done right is ethical and important. And I'm sure it would take some good technology and investment to make that happen. Not just technology, but the people, as Gregory referenced.
Yeah, it's hard to compete with people being the answer, to be honest, because I think at the end of the day, it really is people who run a company. There are technology pieces, of course, but people are making a lot of the decisions and will continue to. It's something that we tell our team internally and we tell all of our clients is you're buying into people. You're believing in them. You're believing that they're going to do what they say, et cetera. But since I can't say the same thing as Gregory, I will go ahead and say content. I think content right now, it can mean so many different things. It's a bit all encompassing intentionally. Content is really important from an educational perspective for acquiring new clients, from an educational perspective in acquiring new talent, from a relevancy perspective when it comes to the media. If you're focused on being an expert source in the regulatory area, if you will, then work on a research-based content piece. Have that be not just your brand behind it. Have some analysts associated with it. Think of content in the ways that you can create it that can make it a little bit differentiated for you, and making sure that it's cohesive. Having content out there that's different from each person within a company can be a little, quite frankly, confusing. There's a lot of C words in here, I realize. But it's really important to make sure that there's a cohesive combination across the leaders within a company, and having that content say something too, to my earlier point, not just out there to be out there. Make sure that it has an opinion and there's a person associated with it.
So we had a lot of P words and C words.
Okay, so I'm going to assume you've done the people right, you have the product, you've got the technology, you've got a content plan. Okay, so let's assume that all that went right, because I think that what everybody says are really important building blocks too. Of if you just had, $1 to invest, where do you put it? But so let's say all of that is right, then I would say investing in clarity of message. So we work with a lot of B2B fintech and payment companies, and there's in many cases, this is an entirely new category or industry or explanation of what, they're trying to explain that they do. And we see very often that there's a great idea and there's the right people behind it, but the message is just so, convoluted. It's way too technical. It's too complicated. People don't understand it. As we're moving more also into the world of embedded finance, where all roads lead to embedded finance, right, Zach? Like this is another area where companies are starting to sound very much alike. And so being very clear about like where you fit within embedded finance and what exactly you do versus your competitors, because we're finding that everybody's sort of racing towards the same thing. A lot of these platform solutions are able to do a lot of the same stuff, but it's back to those, the early days of just understanding like, who are you and what is your purpose and what do you do better than anybody else? So I would say investing really in your message and how you make that clear to others and how you sort of, find your unique voice and how do you stand out amongst the competition.
I love that. And we have a funny joke with our reporters. I mean, there are a few firms in the embedded finance field that I've interviewed quite a few times. And I go back to my team and I'm like, I still don't know what they do.
Right. Yeah. And if you don't know what they do, then how does anybody know what they do?
Yeah, exactly. We have time for one last question, which is great. This has been incredibly engaging. We actually, as we were thinking of the Acquire Conference, we actually had called it Growth Conference in the beginning, and we just realized that felt a little too narrow. We wanted to really talk about everything that's customer facing, and but specifically towards growth. How important is growth to your clients? Who wants to take a first shot at that?
To go first? No, I'll go first. I'm kidding, Zach. I want to go second, right?
Fast follower.
Look, if it was nine months ago, roughly, you probably even wrote the story. You may have that the buzzword around growth would have been 1% growth, right? That would be an amazing year, 1% growth to have any growth. I'd say fast forward to today, and the number of companies in our category have seen significant growth. Mm-hmm. Things they did not anticipate. Whereas, COVID obviously was the sad story of 2020, that the story in our area would be things like valuation, exceptional growth, mm-hmm. 9 months, right? Why? Pent-up demand, more meetings actually happening, meetings such as these. At the same time, companies are looking internally and improving all the P's and the C's we were talking about before, right? Whole new brands. I said at the top of this call, I think I've introduced 3 new challenger banks in the last couple months, right? That were invented at the top of 2020, right? Conceived of, and then in the market 9 months later. That's growth too, pace of growth. Mm-hmm. So how important is growth? We all represent on this call growth companies, right? And so that is an orientation. Many of my clients, in fact, are either the CEO or the CRO. Right? They're not a chief communications officer or chief marketing officer. They're in charge of the question you just asked, how to grow this business. So how important is it? Exceptionally important. Why is it exceptionally important? Folks had more time to actually work on the thing called growth as opposed to being scattered. Right? But I'll pause there.
Well, you hit on something that is absolutely appropriate to us too. I think the kind of PR that we all practice here is proactive, and just throw out another P. A lot of companies that are not interested in growth see PR as either the complaint department or kind of reactive, like we'll put somebody over there and they'll answer their emails. But we're in the business of getting good stories out there. To Jennifer's point, clarity, making it clear. How does this company differentiate itself from the others? And it's what comes out of the executive's mouths. It's what's on the website. It's the customer testimonials that you can demonstrate the value that they're providing. One trend I'm seeing that's probably a very good thing with technology providers, and most of our clients are B2B, but we're seeing that more B2B to C. So companies that have a digital offering that are working through financial institutions, it's not good enough now to say, hey, here's my stuff, it's configurable, have fun with it, call me. They're really taking ownership and pride and another P, partnership kind of attitude. I want to make sure that if this bank rolls out this technology, that people are using it and taking advantage of it. And if there's important input coming back to make it better, I want to know. So I think that's a good thing for the industry.
I would actually just add to that on the partnerships front. Another thing that we're seeing with a lot of our clients is a focus on M&A, where and when it's right, and openness. I think to Gregory's point, there's more time to think through things like that maybe we haven't had historically. And thinking about partnerships and investing. Some large financial institutions are investing into smaller, younger fintech startups, or they're creating a partnership. So thinking about how do they work together to solve problems and using that as a way to grow, rather than just the organic growth. I think we'll continue to see that be a trend going forward. And I think it's something that speaks to the time that we have right now, but also the value that they're seeing from, well, they've built it. How can we help to support that? And also, how can we tap into that for our own growth?
Yeah, that is a great point. Growth through partnerships continue to be so important in the fintech and banking space. So growth is everything to the clients we work with. I don't think I've met a company that's not interested in, supercharged growth. And I'd say the way that 2021 is starting out with all of these, liquidity events with the IPOs and the SPACs and everything else, it's just going to be a high degree of focus on growth and valuation, which, as we know as PR people, can sometimes be a great thing and sometimes be frustrating because you don't want to feel like you're working towards a valuation boost, even though it's important. It's like, we're here to be brand builders, right? Like, we believe in the power and the value of brands. And as much as, you can turn on a digital marketing effort and know the next day, how it's working and not, or know the next minute and whether it's working or not, and A/B testing it and this and that and the other, we also know that there's just such a power of building a strong, trusted brand over time, and how that will take you through multiple events, including making you a higher value if you're having a liquidity event. And so growth at all costs is not great. Growth while also building the brand is, I think something that's really important.
Well said. I couldn't think of four finer individuals than you guys to do our first YouTube live. So thank you for being part of that. And wonderful conversation as always. Thank you. And
I appreciate you putting us together. I want to get this group together for a sidebar conversation some other time.
Yeah. I actually want to ask you all how you define embedded finance and what other categories you're putting your companies in, because I can't keep track of what words we're in or what categories. We all need to get together and just define what that's going to be.
There's a water.
We're going to refer you to a source, this guy Zach Miller. Just
or Zach, you need to just tell us all. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. This was really engaging and really interesting. So thanks you guys for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good to see everybody.
Bye, everyone.